Hello, guys. Today's true crime story takes us to Nevada in the United States of America to meet the Black Widower, aka Thomas Randolph. In case you are wondering how he got that name, I will explain to you. Thomas Randolph got the name the Black Widower because four of his six wives died mysteriously, and the surviving two wives also claimed in their testimony that he tried to take their lives. At the age of 65, Thomas Randolph was serving a life sentence without parole for two murder convictions when, by a stint of luck, his conviction was overturned because of a technicality by the Supreme Court, and he now stands a chance to have a retrial, and if he wins, will go home scot-free. This case was an evolving case as at August 2023, and the retrial just concluded. But before we get to the verdict of the retrial, I'm going to take you back for us to chronicle everything that transpired from his first wife through to his sixth wife, and how four of his six wives died, and also the fact that he had some financial gains from two of the deaths. This true crime story will attempt to break down the whole mystery, the facts, the stories, and should I say, the myth around the Black Widower of Nevada, Thomas Randolph. Now, the whole thing starts with his first wife, and I'll take it wife by wife because as it stands now, he is actually going to have a retrial for the accused murder of his sixth wife. But before we get to that one, we are going to first start with his first wife, and I'll chronicle the details and the facts as has been obtained about each wife and what happened with them through to what actually took him to jail in the first place, and what brought him out for the retrial, and what the verdict of the retrial was, and what life is going to be going forward for this Black Widower. His first wife was called Catherine Thomas, and fortunately for her, she is alive. It's not clear how long Catherine and Thomas were married for, but irrespective of that, it's reported per Catherine's testimony that at least at a point in time when they were together, the Black Widower had tried to take her life. She went on to tell the jury when she testified against him that he was very abusive and also quite manipulative towards her. And in this case, when things like this come up, it becomes a bit difficult not to believe when you begin to see a trail spanning across six wives. You might not believe these statements earlier at the time when it was made or they were made. But fast forward to the sixth wife's issue, you begin to see a trend forming. And I would plead that you follow the facts as I lay them out. And by the time we get to the sixth wife, you will see that truly the trend had formed. So this was what his first wife said. And at the time, they lived together in Utah. Now, prosecutors at the time also claimed that Thomas Randolph had actually hired a hitman to take out his wife or sort of eliminate his wife. But that was not successful. Take note of this point as well, because you would see it coming up across the deaths of some of his wives. This takes us to his second wife by name Becky Gold. Unfortunately for Becky, she is dead. Becky is actually the first of Thomas Randolph's wives to die. Now, upon her death, the Black Widower claimed that Becky committed suicide by shooting herself in the head, and that she had actually threatened to do it at least once when they were together. He couldn't prove this with any substantive evidence, but they were alone. So if he says she said it, it's his word against that of a dead person. That is also not to say that by virtue of that, it's truth. But the dead tell no tales. That's what the saying goes, right? So that was he said. But then the Black Widower was charged with her murder, and the trial included a star witness who would eventually come forward to identify himself as a prospective hitman that Randolph had actually hired to eliminate his second wife, Becky Gold. According to this hitman by name Eric Tarantino, he said that he put two and two together and he realized that if he goes through with the hit, he is going to be the next target of the Black Widower because obviously he deciphered that if he eliminates the Black Widower's second wife, then the Black Widower would want to eliminate him, the hitman, because that would be the smartest thing to do if you want to tie off loose ends. So, based on that analysis, he decided that no, he wasn't going to do that. And as such, he didn't execute the hit. Now you see a second instance of a hitman coming into the conversation. But despite this key testimony, the Black Widower was let off the hook. Thomas Randolph was acquitted of the accusation and possible prosecution of the murder of his second wife, Becky Gold. Now, this took us to his third wife, Gaynor Almond. Fortunately for Gaynor, she is also alive. Now, Gaynor testified against Thomas Randolph at his second trial. She said that she believed Thomas Randolph was trying to have her killed, but that he couldn't convince a hitman to do it. So, this is a third woman who is, well, this is the second woman talking about the fact that her husband, the same denominator, Thomas Randolph, aka the Nevada Black Widower, is trying to have her killed through a hitman. His first wife said it. His third wife, Gaynor Almond, is now saying it. His second wife has died mysteriously, and a hitman allegedly, or an alleged hitman, comes forward to say the same thing. So the pattern is drawn. Now, according to her, she recalled at the trial that he was cleaning his gun at a point in time when they were married, and he fired at her after cleaning the gun. Now, Thomas Randolph also actually came out to rebut that statement, saying that it was an accident. He didn't do it intentionally. Now, you begin to see how this is playing out. It could be possible it was an accident, or it could be possible it was deliberate, especially with the history that seems to be around him with regards to trying to eliminate his wives with hitmen. Wouldn't it be convenient also if, in cleaning his gun, it just went off accidentally and eliminated her for him? Yeah, it begs that thinking to an extent. But then again, how do you prove it wasn't an accident? So, again, nothing really stuck. Now, Gaynor went on to say that she believed that it wasn't an accident and that it was a threat to her life. Now, all these things were going on around this one man, but some way, somehow, he was still free. And this takes us to his fourth wife, simply known as Frances. Now, Frances, unfortunately, is also dead, just like his second wife. His fourth wife, Frances, died in 2004. Now, a man actually testified at trial that he, guess what, had been recruited by Thomas Randolph, aka the Nevada Black Widower, to do what? Guess what? To eliminate his fourth wife. So this guy seems to have his pattern in check. Get the hitman to eliminate my wife. And I'm sure by now it's begging the question in your mind that why? Obviously, if you don't love your wife, divorce her, go your separate ways. Why the need to eliminate her? We'll come to that. Now, this person or this hitman alleged was in the person of Glenn Morrison, and he told the jury that Thomas Randolph plotted with him to eliminate his fourth wife, Frances, in Indiana. Now, according to him, this was planned together with the so called husband to eliminate his wife. But unfortunately, he declined the job because he said that he also didn't want to be taken out or eliminated by Randolph after he had performed the hit. So these hitmen, well, of course, it's their craft. So if you come trying to recruit them for a hit, obviously they'll put two and two together before they accept, and they get to know that okay, if I perform the hit, I'm next on the target because obviously the person would want to get rid of me to tie up loose ends, and they refused. Although it has also not been documented that they are professional hitmen, but at least they were contracted to perform a hit by Thomas Randolph, per the facts out there. So this hitman also refused. So this brings to a total of three alleged hitmen recruited by Thomas Randolph, and we are on his fourth wife. Frances, his fourth wife, died in suspicious circumstances, and immediately after her death, guess what Thomas Randolph did? He cremated her. He then even went on to sue the hospital where his wife had been treated and died for an unspecified illness, and he won the settlement from them. And then, guess what? He also got a payment from a life insurance policy he had taken out on Francis. So, for those of you who were having the question of why lingering in your mind with regards to why would he want to take out his wife? Why would he want a hitman to eliminate his wives? I think you are beginning to have an idea as to the answer from this because when his fourth wife passed on under the suspicious circumstances, he quickly had her cremated and then sued the hospital for a settlement, and then he cashed out on the life insurance he had put out on her. Interesting, right? Okay. We go to his fifth wife, Leona Stapleton. Little is known of Leona actually, or the day she actually died, but then, according to reports out there, she reportedly died of cancer. There isn't any suspicion around her death with regards to foul play, and foul play for that matter being linked to Thomas Randolph, the Black Widower. So the fifth wife has passed on too. So now we've learned that his first wife is alive, his third wife is alive, his second wife is dead, fourth wife dead. He claimed insurance on the death of his fourth wife. His fifth wife is dead, presumably out of cancer. Then we get to the substantive case. This is the highlight of his retrial. The sixth wife, Sharon Kelsey. Sharon Kelsey, unfortunately, is also dead. So she is the fourth dead wife. Now, we are going to get into how Sharon died or how she was found or the facts or details about her death. She was found dead from a gunshot wound in 2008. All this came to light when Thomas Randolph, at the time, called police claiming he had come home to find her dead and that there was a man in his home. So he made this call to 911 and obviously they would follow up. And when they came, they saw Thomas Randolph's sixth wife, Sharon Kelsey, dead. And then they saw another man who had been shot about 5 times, also dead in the house. This man would later be identified as Michael James Miller. And when asked, Thomas Randolph indicated that he saw Miller in his house, Miller was armed, and that Miller had actually shot and killed his sixth wife, Sharon Kelsey, and in a state of self defense to prevent Miller from killing him too, he, Thomas Randolph, shot and killed Miller. It makes sense, right? Yeah, on the face of it. Obviously, if somebody comes into your home and has taken the life of your wife, aside you even wanting to defend yourself, I think that most people will also be motivated to sort of try to avenge what the person has done to their spouse. So it seems like this is in line with natural instincts or natural occurrences per the flow of the events as being narrated by Thomas Randolph, the only surviving person of the three people at the scene, namely his sixth wife, the alleged killer, and he himself. But again, like I said, dead people tell no tales. Now, unfortunately for him, Kelsey's family were a bit suspicious of his story, as were the police as well, because, you know, certain stories just don't add up. Sometimes you can't put your finger on it immediately, but as the story is told to you and you begin to break down the facts in your head with objectivity and a clear conscience, a clear mind, you begin to realize that, nah, either this story has too many potholes or this story is too clean. Yeah, I don't know if you've experienced that before. You can let me know in the comment section. I have on a number of occasions. And if you probe further, you dig deeper, you would realize that, yeah, you were right. Your instincts were right. So I'm not surprised that Kelsey's family were suspicious of his story, as were the police as well, because even in the case of Thomas Randolph, it wouldn't be difficult because he already has a trail behind him through to his sixth wife. And it looks like per the trail, per the trend from his first wife to now his sixth wife, it's like everything he was being accused of, everything he was being accused as being capable of scheming and executing through hitmen had now come together and has been successfully played out in the case of his sixth wife's death. So he was then charged with the double murder of his sixth wife and Michael Miller because police didn't buy the story. But then he was also heavily against it, saying that he didn't kill anybody, he didn't kill his wife. His wife was killed by Michael Miller. He came, chanced upon it, and in him trying to defend himself, he had to shoot Miller 5 times. Fast forward, he was actually convicted and he was jailed. But then, that is where the technicality comes in. He was jailed on the basis of a technicality that the Supreme Court would later reject because they were not happy with it. What happened? Remember the trend I spoke to you about? Those ones came into play because when he was sentenced in 2017 for the murders of his sixth wife, his conviction was also dependent on the district courts using the bad or the prior bad act evidence at trial. And they actually are reported to have relied heavily on it. But then the Supreme Court overturned it. So, what does this mean? Let me just simplify it. It simply means that the Supreme Court meant to say that in his prosecution and conviction, the court, the district court for that matter, shouldn't have relied or even used things bordering on his Utah case to influence the sentencing on his Nevada case. They should have treated them independently. And as such, the mistrial was triggered. Now, when this mistrial was triggered, as is expected, Thomas Randolph, now brought back to jail but not released, issued a statement talking about the injustice and how finally something was going to be done right. But you know, there's a proverb here in Africa that if food is destined to get burnt, if you cook it, it will burn. If you grill it, it will burn. If you fry it, it will still burn. Yeah. And that is what played out in the case of Thomas Randolph's retrial, because even after his retrial, the jury deliberated for about 5 hours roughly, and he has still been found guilty of the two counts of murders against him. Personally, I wasn't expecting anything different. Personally, that was the opinion I had looking at the things that were stacked up against him. But the justice system is such that it is not a case of the end justifies the means. It is a balance of the means also justifying the end. Because if the procedure is not followed the right way, you could get a verdict, but you could get it overturned later through an appeal, or even in the case of this black widower, a Supreme Court coming in to rule a mistrial. So it was very critical that the right things had to be done the right way. And in this case, they've done it now. And after doing so, Thomas Randolph has still been found guilty of those two murders, and he's due for sentencing in a few days from now. Now, this true crime story is very, very unraveling. Unraveling on the institution of marriage. Why do I say this? When cases like this come up, sometimes you wonder why people got into marriage in the first place. Why do you decide to get married to someone, take a life insurance on them, and then get them killed? And he did that to two of his wives, or let me say, he's accused of doing that to two of his wives and cashing out after their deaths because he has taken a policy out on them. Somebody could also argue that he didn't really task any hitman to eliminate his wives because there hasn't been so much of a substantial proof that I am aware of that seeks to corroborate the fact that he actually recruited hitmen. 100% proof. There are sort of proofs out there, but not foolproof evidence, if I may say. But then somebody could also be arguing that, and I have people who are actually trying to put the arguments across, although I debunked it. But some people were of the view are like, oh, Thomas Randolph probably could also have the possibility of being the most luckiest guy who has had four of his wives die. And out of those four, he had the chance to claim a life insurance. Because after all, isn't that what life insurance is for? But then again, I'm like, this guy can't be like that. In case it's that way, then he's not fortunate if you are not being selfish and looking at the monetary gain. He's rather the most unfortunate person because if you lose a spouse, it's supposed to hurt, it's supposed to sting. You are losing your life partner, your soulmate. Why should that make you lucky? That statement in itself presupposes that he was in it for the money, if you think like that for him. So I think that this case can play out at different parts of the world as long as the institution of marriage is there but has been corrupted in someone's heart or mind because of financial gain due them if their selfish desires are met. And sometimes these desires do not mind having to involve the elimination of a spouse or the other. This has played out in Lori Vallow Daybell. This has played out in Thomas Randolph's case. This has played out in numerous cases. This is not the first. If you go through my playlist, you see numerous cases like this. And I think that it's high time that we also begin to appreciate the value of certain relationships devoid of the financial tag. It shouldn't be that every situation or every relationship should be transactional. If you don't love the person, just don't go in for the person. Don't try to use people as tools to cash out. I think that it's unfair. And looking at the evidence stacked up against him, I believe this time the prosecution got everything right. But let me know what you think. Do you think that he did all the things they are saying he did, from his first wife through to his sixth wife, or you think some of them are coincidences? I don't actually. But let me know what you think about this case and how it shapes your thinking as far as marriage is concerned. Until I come your way next time, I've always been saying this. Keep an eye out, stay safe out there, and hey, subscribe to the channel as well. Catch you next time.